Welcome. I'm Marie Gwin, Vice President of Corporate Underwriting and a member of the Berkley Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. Thank you for joining us to celebrate Women's History Month. Today, I have joining me Simone Grimes, who is the CFO of Acadia Insurance. Acadia is one of our premier business units. Simone has 20 years of leadership experience in financial services, including 10 years in public accounting and 5 years previously working for a national carrier. Simone is a CPA and has an MBA from Cornell University. Most importantly, she has an interesting perspective and story, and we are pleased that she is willing to share that with us today. So Simone, let's get started celebrating women's history.
Thank you, Marie. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you. Simone, what does Women's History Month mean to you personally?
Yeah, I'm so glad that we're taking a moment to just take a pause and make sure that we're honoring and memorializing the contributions that women have made throughout the decades to U.S. history and as well as to all sections of the U.S. industries. And as I think back to why March was established as Women's History Month, which was really just 42 years ago, not that long ago, it was out of a growing sentiment that the significant achievements that women have made in history had for too long been overlooked or somewhat held in the shadow, and that the absence of highlighting women as key contributors didn't offer hope to future generations of girls who needed to see themselves reflected and mirrored in history as leaders in business and society, etc. And so, you and I both work in financial services, which has, quite frankly, historically been a male-dominated industry. And while the data is promising, as of this year, we're seeing that approximately 22% of key executives in the financial services industry are women, and that number is expected to grow. It's still below parity. And so, we always say what's measured matters. And so it's important that we are measuring this. It's important that we are taking a moment to acknowledge it. And it's really important that we, number one, continue to track and highlight the successful leadership of women in our industry, that we encourage women to see promise and opportunity in this industry, which you and I both know is very rewarding, and that we leverage our influence as leaders to encourage companies to embed strategies that facilitate women being successful in our industry. And some of those very specific strategies include internal recruitment and retention of women in our industry, as well as strategies for supportive re-entry, because so many of us take on the role as primary caregiver and need that flexibility, and more formalized sponsorship. So the nurturing nature of women has really shaped how we honor Women's History Month, and it's really about taking a moment to give inspiration and hope to young women who are beginning their career journey, who need to see themselves mirrored in the dreams they wish to pursue.
Thank you, Simone. That was very thoughtful response. How have women helped you in terms of shaping your career and your personal journey?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it sounds corny because we hear it so often, when we talk to people of all genders, all races, et cetera. You often hear, it was my mother, and it's because we wear so many hats. And, I would be remiss not to say that, my early foundation was heavily influenced by the women in my family who established who I would approach my life. My mother, my grandmothers, my aunts, the women in my family who had experienced firsthand, for me particularly, some of their experiences were some of the injustices of both racism and gender inequality, as well as on one side of my family, the challenge of being immigrants who came to the U.S. with hopes for a brighter future. And they really grounded me in the notion that while there is a promise of a bright future, nothing is promised. You have to work really hard and you have to be intentional about what you want out of this journey. And as long as you have to work hard, you may as well be fearless in the pursuit of what makes you happy. And so that early foundation really allowed me to take a lot of risks that I might not have made otherwise. I started my way in my career in a bit of an untraditional way. I graduated from college and I started a business. You can call it a startup now. Back then it was just graduating from college without a job and, trying your hand at an unproven business. And that wasn't really popular then as it is now. But I did it, and I worked hard. I acquired investors, I grew the business, and I successfully negotiated an exit. And that was in my 20s, and it really built my confidence. And that whole time, I had encouragement from the women in my family who were telling me to challenge the status quo and pursue my passions. And that allowed me to start my career with early confidence and career successes. And it really taught me to lean into what inspires me, which is, high growth industries, innovative environments that really support a strong culture of innovation. And I know you and I will get into it a little bit later, but that's really what drew me to WR Berkley, because it really is that culture. But, going back into how women have shaped my journey, it really was at every step of the way when I segued into a new, very bespoke and niche industry in the financial services segment. I've always been in financial services, but it was women along the way who helped me really see the experiences and successes that I'd had, how they would segue into another facet of the industry. So, it was a woman who brought me to a large national carrier where I was able to really lead some broad strategic initiatives. It was a woman who helped me really hone my career in public accounting. And that was at a time that was a bit challenging for me because I was a mom. And so many of us have to negotiate that balance. But it was the women leaders in the company who really helped set the tone for how you could balance both and still be successful. And it was, just along the way, I've continuously had, strong women mentors who've helped me identify a seat at the table where I may not have seen that for myself. And I think that's why it's so important for us as women leaders to do the same for those coming into our companies, into our segment, into our industries, to really identify and champion how they can be key contributors in the space that we occupy. And that is one of the things that I really appreciate about the WR Berkley family of companies, is that you see so many women in leadership roles at the top, and that has really made this an exciting and interesting company.
And you're right, we are a company and we do have women in leadership roles. As you said, that there's still more to be done. Why do you think it's important that we have more women in leadership roles? And just before you answer that, Simone, I just want to say that, sometimes when people, even me asking this question, so sometimes when people hear that, they think that we're saying one individual or one group of individuals is more important than another. And that's not what we're saying at all. We're just saying that we think when there are opportunities for all of us to contribute, that you usually have better outcomes. So I'm sorry, I sort of digressed from the question, but why do you think it's important that there are more women leaders in business?
No, I think actually the way you asked the question is exactly indicative of why it is more important. It's that ability to see kind of the numbers exercised in reality, which for example, in the Berkley companies, we see that when we have more women in leadership roles, we attract more women to pursue those goals. And, at the end of the day, you and I were both in business, and it does, for those who really want to measure it by the numbers, then the numbers do speak for themselves. We see that in companies that have a more diversified C-suite, that the business outcomes are better. I think Berkley is a very good example of that. This is a company and a culture that really supports ensuring that we have the best interest of our shareholders in mind, but also of our customers and also of our employees. And you and I both know that, culture eats strategy for breakfast. If we don't have a strong culture that's really committed and embodies the values that we espouse, then we can't actually pull off, any strategy that suggests that that's what we're leaning into. And so I think it's important to have a diverse set of views at the table, as you've mentioned, and to be able to see yourself mirrored in positions that you would like to be in, and for us to make sure that we are being very intentional in setting that table for, women who are entering their career and have aspirations. So for all of those reasons, I think it's very important. And, Marie, you really brought up a great point because, it's been so interesting and encouraging for you and I to chat. We've chatted a few times, and I've gotten so much out of your story, which I think is just phenomenal. And so one of the things that brought me to the WR Berkley companies, I kind of mentioned it, is really just that that culture of innovation, that ability to be entrepreneurial, the very unique setup that we have where we're able to treat our customers in a very unique and specific and granular way so that we deliver them the best solutions and we also deliver our shareholders the best outcomes. Could you tell me a little bit about what attracted you to the W.R. Berkley companies?
I will. And Simone, I had worked for another company for many years, 20 plus years. So there are a lot of people surprised when I left that company. And what some people don't know is one of the people who was surprised was myself. But what happened is that I was contacted to start up a renewable energy operation within Berkeley. And I had heard the chairman and Rob speak at industry functions, so they were recognizable to me. But I really didn't know that much about the company. So my background is underwriting, so I did what I think all good underwriters do. I did the research to evaluate, well, what was the risk and what was the reward as well. But when I did the research, I looked at internal publications. So I read annual reports. I looked at the website. That was the first time that I saw the company motto that everything counts and everyone matters, which that was intriguing to me. I knew from that research how well run the company was, how, what a fantastic business performance the company had been making and sustaining for years. But what really, I think, sold me, in addition to that, was the external information that I read about some of the contributions and the time that the chairman was spending. There's a Berkeley Center at Georgetown University. I read about his involvement with various schools. Prior to being in insurance, I was a teacher. So that when I saw where time and energy was being spent on things like education, which is so near and dear to me, because I think education is a means to lift people up, that really sold me on the company. And I thought maybe this really is a company that lives up to its motto, that everything counts and everyone matters. And joining Berkeley has been the best decision of my career. So it is just, I feel like it's a community, and the closer you work with people, they feel like family. So, we're not perfect, but it is the best company that I've ever worked for. And I get an opportunity to meet people like you that, that inspire me. So it's just, that's the reason that I joined Berkeley.
And I'm so glad you said that because, the theme for this year's Women's History Month is really about inspiration and hope. And it's honoring the fact that women in so many aspects of our lives, we saw through the pandemic, serve as primary caregivers and really get pulled in multiple directions. And it's so important to be in an organization that honors the whole self and honors and acknowledges all the many hats that we wear, as well as all the many roles that we serve in. And so, with that in mind and really taking this unique moment to honor Women's History Month, think about the year that we're in, as well as the extraordinary opportunities in the insurance industry, as well as that we've experienced both at W.R. Berkley, what kind of career advice would you give to new women just starting their career journey?
So that's a good question. And there are three things that pop up for me. The first one is passion, in terms of pick something that you actually love doing, because every day may not be a walk in the park. So pick something that you enjoy doing. And if you find that you're in a career that you don't like, get out of it and find something that that you really enjoy doing. For me personally, insurance has been a great career. This is something that a lot of people don't think about, in terms of nothing happens without insurance. You can't buy a house, you can't own a business. For me, I've had some tremendous opportunities. My background is in underwriting, so I have underwritten some really interesting accounts, including things like different kind of manufacturers. I've had to understand a nuclear power plant to write that. I've had, one of my most fun things to do is actually to meet the customers that we insure. So I've had some really great opportunities and fun with my risk engineering counterpart, visiting some of those insurers that I was privileged enough to write. I've been on oil rigs. I've, toured ethanol plants. One of my favorite and more interesting customers is a wind turbine contractor that basically they use rope access to maintain the wind turbine. So just experiences that I, never had or never thought that I would have. So passion, picking something that you actually love doing is the first thing. The second thing that I think about is resilience, because we don't always get something right the first time, right? Sometimes we don't live up to our own expectations. Sometimes we feel we don't live up to others' expectations of, our performance. So what I would say is be resilient. When you fall, get up, learn from your mistakes, and stay engaged. And the third thing, and it might be the most important of the three, is your attitude. And by that, I mean, well, be an optimist. There's nothing wrong with being an optimist, right?
Doesn't hurt.
It cannot hurt, right? I recently ran across a quote by Henry Ford, and this really stayed with me, and I'm really horrible at quotes, but this quote goes something like, if you think you can, or you think if you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right. And I think that speaks to your attitude, and having a positive attitude, I think is so important. You've heard the saying that in life, you cannot control the cards that you're dealt, but you can control how you pick them up and you can control how you play them. So those are the three things that come to mind when I think about the advice that I give, not just to women, but anyone in business or anyone in life for that matter. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, passion, resilience, and attitude. I think that this year has been or these past 2 years, I can't believe it's been 2 years. These past 2 years have been a great example of how important that is. We have certainly made very strong strides in that space. Our company has performed well, and we've seen the results of having, a positive attitude, being passionate about the work, and demonstrating resilience. I really think that is critical, and I'm so glad that you shared that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Simone, on behalf of the committee, I want to thank you for your willingness to share your story and spending time with us and being part of our celebration for Women's History Month. I can't think of a better person to be part of the celebration. So thank you for your time. It's greatly appreciated.